opportunities, those on that stage refused to assert their dignity against the affront to that dignity that was represented by Donald Trump. For example, when he goes after Jeb Bush, when he goes after the Bush family and John McCain, those are moments early on in this process where these individuals were tested, and they made a political calculation, not one based on their own self-respect and dignity. Right. In other words, call me an SOB, baby, but I can look at myself in the mirror in the morning. And oh, by the way, right back at you. So that kind of tension was never moved into it. And in other words, they just avoided it. And here we are.
And Connie, I feel like this is something you write about in your columns that you write about in your novel, which is that adult life is a bunch of ethical choices. It's compromises. It's questions about your integrity, about how you relate to other people, in no matter what position you have, whether you're a waiter or a parent or a politician, and just to watch people give away this precious thing, which is their own freedom and dignity, at the cost that it will have for the rest of us, is incredibly difficult to watch.
Well, Chris, politicians are like regular people in this way. There are two types. You either grow and evolve in that role, or you devolve, right? You shrivel and you become someone you wouldn't even recognize a decade later. I keep thinking about a book review I did for the Washington Post in 2018 on Michael D'Antonio and Peter Eisner's book, The Shadow President, and it was about Pence. And they described him as the most successful Christian supremacist in the country. And that the reason he was willing to hitch his wagon to Trump is that Trump was God's plan for Pence. And I think that's what we're not, because we don't think this way, it's hard to imagine it, but it seems to me pretty clear that Mike Pence and his closest supporters, the ardent supporters, see him as doing what he must do to eventually become president. And they think it's all part of God's plan. And I say that as a woman of faith. It is appalling to me that they could justify it that way. But I also think it's not unreasonable to think that's what's going on here right now.
There's also again, politics is about winning. And that's what politicians want to do. They want to win, and they want to stay in power. And even on that score, I mean, here's Kelly Loeffler, right? Kelly Loeffler, if there's a one person you could put a finger on and say, Donald Trump cost you your job, right? Like, just cost you. You paid a Donald Trump tax in votes. It's Kelly Loeffler, okay? So, again, purely amoral calculation, self-preservation. And here's Kelly Loeffler, like, tweeting about how great this guy is. I mean, there is a reason that the one-term presidents who are turfed out by the American people don't become the avatars for their party, because usually there's this, like, what did we do wrong here moment, and yet even by that calculation, they're not doing it, Michael.
No, they're not. And part of that calculation is there was so much banked in Donald Trump, on Donald Trump. There was so much that was placed on that brand. He had suckered them into taking on that brand, making it a part of themselves, reimagining the GOP as, Donald J. Trump. And so when you realize that the American people have a different understanding of all of that and a different appreciation, to the point that they are willing to unelect him, where do you go? What else is Kelly Loeffler going to do? Of course she's going to take a picture with Donald Trump and brag about him. Where does she go? Because to walk away from that begs the question, well, couldn't you figure this out a few years ago? Didn't you know, to your point, Chris, that this was a one-way street to nowhere? And that's their problem. They're stuck on a highway they can't get off of.